When you're booking a trip to Tahoe, there are a lot of options out there. The region is a great option for a ski vacation, with incredible views, distinctive footprints, extreme terrain, and a location within driving distance from the Bay Area. But not all Tahoe ski resorts are created equal, and you might be wondering which ones are the best to hit. In this video, we'll rank the Tahoe ski areas in order of their overall mountain experience, and we'll highlight the strengths and weaknesses of each one. This list includes destination ski areas intended to attract all abilities and does not include very small hills such as Donner Ski Range and Boreal. And before we jump in, we'll just caveat that none of the resorts on this list are truly terrible. In fact, we'd say every single one of them is above average for North American skiing. Enjoy! Coming in at the bottom of our list is Homewood, which is literally on the edge of Lake Tahoe. Homewood may be at the bottom of the destinations on this list, but it's one of the most astonishing resorts out there, boasting truly jaw-dropping views of the lake from every resort area. On top of that, there are never any crowds. But besides those traits, the resort just isn't competitive. Homewood is much smaller than its competition and lags considerably behind in snowmaking and snow retention due to its low elevation. The resort has one high-speed lift and some very solid tree terrain, but half its lifts are usually closed on weekdays. And despite Homewood's compact dimensions, stopping in for a break is somewhat of a chore with limited on-mountain facilities and frustrating catwalks needed to get around. Homewood is a great mountain to spend a day at to soak in the lake views, but otherwise it's better just to go somewhere else. Homewood is really cheap if you go on a weekday, but the resort's ticket prices can really vary, and the resort is incredibly overpriced on peak weekends and holidays, especially if you buy at the ticket window. Diamond's Peak is a similar story to our last mountain. Excellent lake views, but so-so overall mountain experience. We wouldn't call Diamond Peak's lake views quite as good as Homewood's, but the resort is much better than Homewood when it comes to on-mountain maintenance, boasting some of the best grooming in the entire region. The resort also features a surprisingly good terrain park, some solid off-piste glade terrain, and a high-speed lift servicing its upper mountain. But Diamond Peak is small. At just 400 acres, it's the smallest mountain on this list, and its footprint is exceptionally narrow. On top of that, Diamond Peak is at a low elevation for Tahoe, and conditions are quite variable throughout the season, especially in the glades that make the resort so unique. Diamond Peak just beats out Homewood, but its terrain and amenities are no match for the other mountains on this list. Diamond Peak is overpriced, charging the same amount as much better competitors. It might be worth it for one day for the views, but the asking price is tough to justify for such a small footprint. Mount Rose is the most convenient mountain to reach from Reno on this list, sitting just half an hour from many parts of the city, and located along the actual pass used to get from Reno to most of the other Tahoe ski resorts. The resort sits at a higher base elevation than every other Tahoe resort and sees strong snow quality for the region. However, Mount Rose suffers from some of the worst wind problems anywhere in Tahoe due to its exposure, resulting in regular wind holds and scoured slopes. Mount Rose's standout slopes are its expert chutes, which are extremely demanding, unique in variety, and pretty easy to access for their difficulty. But these lines are rarely open, and the resort's other terrain is pretty mediocre. A modest footprint and limited lake views also hurt Mount Rose's appeal, although the views of nearby Reno, which is much lower in elevation and completely different from the resort in terms of landscape, are pretty cool. Mount Rose is priced reasonably enough if you purchase a weekday ticket in advance, but weekend, holiday, and day of tickets are steep. Sugar Bowl is one of the most convenient ski resorts to reach from the Bay Area and Sacramento, and it's the first major resort you'll hit when driving up Interstate 80. Sugar Bowl stands out thanks to a footprint that truly caters to all abilities, ranging from family-friendly greens and blues all the way to true extremes. The resort also enjoys some of the best snow quality in Tahoe, with nearby Donner Lake producing a lake effect that pounds the mountain, and most areas are served by high-speed lifts. However, the resort is pretty modest in size at just over 1,000 acres, and it's especially lacking in vertical, with just a 1,500-foot vertical drop from top to bottom. On top of that, some of Sugar Bowl's best expert lines are almost never open, with some runs staying closed for entire seasons. There are also a couple of pretty annoying catwalks. Sugar Bowl is a well-rounded mountain, but it's just not big enough to beat the better-known Tahoe resorts. Sugar Bowl isn't cheap, although for the most part, it's more reasonable than its better North Lake competitors. If you haven't been to Northstar, it might look pretty good on paper. High-speed lifts, over 3,000 acres of terrain, and a fully dedicated freestyle mountain zone make this resort look pretty appealing at a first glance. However, Northstar lacks some key essentials that most of its competitors do incredibly well. First off, the terrain feels pretty ordinary for such a big mountain. While Northstar's trees are cool, there aren't any bowls, and most neighboring trails feel pretty similar to one another. In addition, there aren't any expert runs, meaning Northstar significantly lags behind the other world-class steeps offered by other Tahoe mountains. And then there's the feel of the mountain itself. The resort feels muddied and commercialized, and lacks the same natural beauty as most other Tahoe mountains, with very little in the way of lake views. And finally, crowds have gotten way worse in recent seasons. Northstar may be good if you want a mountain that has normal below tree-line terrain, is naturally resistant to wind holds, and has a reliable early season snow base, but otherwise, it's probably worth it to go somewhere else. Northstar commands a hefty asking price for advanced purchase weekday tickets, but weekend and holiday tickets are even more expensive, and arguably overpriced for the experience. Quick note, Sierra-at-Tahoe tragically incurred significant fire damage last August due to the Calder fire, and was effectively unable to open for the 2021-22 season. The resort has been working diligently to restore their footprint, and they claim they'll be able to fully open for the upcoming 2022-23 season. This rank is based on the terrain as it existed prior to the fire, and it is subject to change should the experience differ significantly post-reopening. Sierra isn't the biggest resort on this list, but it stands out with a local feel. Historically, the resort has specialized in tree terrain, with distinctive obstacles such as rocks on some of the tougher trails. The resort also has some of the best freestyle terrain in Tahoe, with parks for all abilities. And on busy days, guests will appreciate the lift redundancies at all major junctions. Sierra's biggest downside is arguably the particularly variable opening schedule for its expert terrain. The formidable Huckleberry Canyon boasts steep cliffs, glades, and cornices, but it's rarely open, sometimes going an entire season without the rope dropping. Sierra didn't release tickets for the 2021-22 season, but ticket prices for prior seasons were quite reasonable, undercutting all other Tahoe resorts offering comparable experiences. With an in-advance ticket purchase, the resort is arguably the best value on this list. Kirkwood is probably the prime Tahoe area for something no frills. The resort has minimal buildup, is in an incredibly remote place, and has slow lifts in most areas. But Kirkwood stands out with a truly striking footprint, complete with remarkable peaks that line the resort. This is especially impressive given Kirkwood is an hour south of the lake and has no lake views. Kirkwood's general lack of crowds further heightens the feeling of remoteness. The resort also boasts lighter, drier snow than most competitors. The resort is not one to mess with. Kirkwood hosts the best extreme terrain in the south half of Tahoe, with extraordinary chutes, cliffs, and couloirs available right off the lifts. The hardest runs require mandatory straight lining or jumping to get down in one piece. However, while Kirkwood shines in technicality, it also falls short in beginner and intermediate offerings. And with just a 2,000-foot vertical drop, it lacks any truly long trails. Wind exposure is also a major problem, with wind holds regularly plaguing the entire resort throughout the season. Kirkwood is hard not to love for those who appreciate extremes and natural beauty, but it's not big or logistically capable enough to beat out the other resorts on this list. Kirkwood's tickets are affordable compared to many other Tahoe resorts, with prices more similar to the smaller mountains on this list than the other destinations. If you're looking for the Tahoe destination with the best lake views, Heavenly is the clear go-to. The resort directly overlooks the lake, resulting in astounding vistas that feel like no other at any other ski resort. The resort also boasts quite a sizable footprint, offering enough terrain to keep most guests busy for several days. Standout areas include glades, especially in upper mountain areas, and the expert Mott and Kilbrew Canyon zones when conditions allow. But Heavenly is far from perfect, with a difficult footprint to get around, very little bowl terrain, and particularly variable conditions in lower mountain areas. In fact, guests will have to download the lower mountain lifts to leave the resort in certain circumstances. The mountain can also get really crowded during peak times, and has a few especially bad choke points. Heavenly's views are truly one of a kind, but they can't carry the resort to the top of this list. Heavenly is not cheap, and guests will have to throw down a pretty penny for those lake views. Alpine Meadows may not be the largest mountain in Tahoe, but several facets make it a really strong choice. The resort sees fewer crowding issues than competitors and feels significantly less built up. On top of that, each lift services hundreds of acres of terrain, meaning that if the weather remains consistent, powder can stay untracked for longer than you might expect. And despite a short vertical drop, the resort boasts surprisingly extreme terrain, with some of the hardest lines anywhere in North America. But Alpine is subject to Tahoe's variability, and upper mountain areas are highly exposed to wind. A considerable portion of Alpine's terrain is not easy to get to. An entire third of the resort requires hiking to reach, and several other areas require traversing. Alpine Meadows' beginner footprint is an afterthought, with only 2 greens at the entire resort. And finally, Alpine does not offer any on-site lodging, making it a tough sell for those looking for a ski-in, ski-out vacation. But despite these drawbacks, Alpine has the snow, extremes, and crowd flow to beat every other ski area in Tahoe, except one. That's right, the Palisades Tahoe duo sweeps gold and silver in our Tahoe rankings. Formerly known as Squaw Valley, the Olympic Valley side of Palisades, which is completely separate from Alpine Meadows but will be connected through a gondola for the upcoming season, is the best resort in Tahoe. This formidable area has world-class extremes across every mountain area, with expert chutes, cliffs, and couloirs across varied topography. The resort may not have the same lake views as Heavenly, but the footprint itself is exceptional, with striking landscapes, rock formations, and high alpine bowls. Those looking for spring skiing will find it at Palisades. Seasons typically extend through May, with the best years even going until July. Beginners and intermediates might find better slopes elsewhere, and this renowned resort is no secret. Lines are a problem on weekends and holidays. But no Tahoe resort is perfect, and it's hard to find a better choice than this one. The 2 Palisades Tahoe areas are on the same lift ticket, and it's the most expensive one in Tahoe. But you're paying for the best, and it's hard to argue with that. So there you have it. That's our official ranking of the destination ski resorts in the Lake Tahoe region. Here's a full breakdown of the overall mountain scores for each resort, along with their valuations in each category. Tahoe is a cutthroat market, and many of these resorts are quite close in rank. How'd we do? Would you change the order? We'd love to hear from you, so hit us with a comment below if you disagree. Also, if you found this information helpful, be sure to give this video a like and hit subscribe. And be sure to check out our in-depth mountain review videos, several of which are on your screen right now. See you for the next one.